Now let's look at some more mundane examples. Let's take George Bush. George W. Bush. So let's take his chart, and he became president of US. He was elected in 2000 November, and he took office. He started as the president of US on January 20, 2001. So I believe sometime in January 2001 there was a stationary transit. So let's look after January 1, 2001. So after this day, when was Jupiter stationary? Oops, not this window. Let's go to the other window. Or did I change the time here? Let's undo everything. I click this undo. So let's go here. Let's do it in the other chart. Use the same discipline so that we have both the charts at the same time. So after January 1, 2001, let's look at November 2004 when he was re-elected. One more thing is you have to also remember that if there is no stationary transit that is triggering something important in your natal chart, it doesn't mean important things cannot happen. The thing is, this is not a necessary condition. When you see that a planet is stationary and triggering something important in your natal chart, you can expect that will augment whatever else you are seeing. So this is just an augmenting factor. So either I missed something or
in fact during that period, because I know my daughter was born on that day of the election, both Jupiter and Saturn were both retrograde.
So that maybe I may have misremembered, maybe Saturn, but I'll go back to it instead of checking again. I'll go back to this letter. But he was re-elected. When he was re-elected in 2004, he faced strong opposition, but from John Kerry, but he won. The opinion polls placed them very close, but in the end, he cruised to victory comfortably by, I think, a larger margin than his first victory. So that was basically a big validation that he found. So that was in November 2004. And I believe, let's go back to the natal chart, Saturn. I think Saturn was stationary after that. Yeah, November 8th, Saturn was stationary. So Saturn was stationary at 14.5 degrees Scorpio. Okay, 14.5 degrees Scorpio and 4 degree Cancer. So let's see the natal chart. Does Saturn is 14.5 degrees Saturn trigger anything? Well, he is triggering himself. Saturn is at 14.5 degree in Scorpio. And one more thing is, interestingly, the Ghatika Lagna is at 15 degree. The Hora Lagna is important for wealth. This moves 2 times fast compared to Lagna. And Ghatika Lagna moves 5 times fast compared to Lagna. It is at the longitude of sun at sunrise and moves at the rate of 1 Ghati or 24 degrees per sign. So in every 24 minutes, it moves by a sign from the longitude of sun at sunrise. So this longitude is at 15.5 degree. So Saturn in the natal chart, he's in the 5th house of power, and also he's very closely conjoined with the seat of power, Ghatika Lagna. So he promises power in the natal chart, and he is being triggered by himself. So that's basically that's a very important transit. And you can also mention other things like he's having half aspect on Ketu. Ketu is one of the 5th lords. He's the 5th lord of power, and also more importantly Ghatika Lagna lord. So Ketu is, if you see the longitudes here in the D10 chart, he's at 14 degree Cancer. So Saturn has half aspect on him, but that's basically not a very strong aspect. But when you look at the aspect on Mars, that there is some aspect on Mars also. He's the lord of the 5th lord, and he's aspecting Saturn. When you do the math, it will be like some 80% aspect. But all those things are secondary. Main thing is Saturn is very closely conjoined with natal GL, and also he's triggering himself. So he can basically give some power. And let's go back and see if it was Saturn. Maybe I think it was actually Saturn. So let's see, in January when he was sworn in 2001, somebody was stationary. I thought, let's see if Saturn was stationary, not Jupiter like I saw earlier. Okay, so Saturn is stationary on January 24. Let's see if there is any link here.
It was the same day.
Oh yeah, same day. So it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
25th, one day before. Wow.
I forgot the exact date earlier. We can actually check. But Saturn was also stationary at that time, and Saturn is an important planet. January 25. Yeah. So Saturn is an important planet here because he's in Ghatika Lagna in the D10 chart in the 5th house of power. So if you see Saturn's longitude in D10, he's at 1644 Libra, 17 degree Libra. And when he's at 17 degree Libra, does it trigger anything? Well, he very closely aspects, almost 100% aspect, this Ketu who's at 14 degree. Right? And what is Ketu? He's the 5th lord in Lagna, bringing power to the person. 5th house of power, he owns it and he's placed in Lagna. So he brings power to the person. And also he's Ghatika Lagna Lord, like we said earlier, in the 9th house from Ghatika Lagna. So the Saturn, who's in the natal Ghatika Lagna, is triggering the Ghatika Lagna Lord. So in one case, he's triggering himself in Ghatika Lagna. In the other case, he's triggering the Lord of that, who's placed in Lagna. So both the transits can be useful from that point of view to him. And let's see the next president also to make it complete. Let's see the next president of US. I believe that there were some stationary transits around his coming to power also. Again, I want to emphasize that this does not need to happen for every important event in life. But obviously, if it happens, then and especially when it occurs, if there is some contact with important natal longitudes, it's a very useful thing. So let's say take Barack Obama, President Barack Obama's chart, and let's see. First we'll take his marriage. 1992 October, I forget the date, but 1992 October he was married to Michelle Obama. So let's say October 1, 1992. After that, when was Saturn stationary? I think it was Saturn. So October 15. So I think he got married either in the first week or second week of October, but it was definitely October 92. So October 15, 1992, Saturn was at 23 degree Gemini. So he was at 23 degree Gemini and he was stationary. So in the natal Navamsha, let's go to Navamsha now because we are seeing marriage. 22 degree Gemini, does it touch anything important?
Venus.
Sagittarius.
For me, Venus is being triggered. And also he has aspect on this Jupiter here, close aspect on the 5th lord. So 5th lord of love and Purvapanya, Jupiter, and Venus in the 5th house. And more importantly, this Saturn, who's at 22 degree Gemini, he's actually having a close aspect on Lagna itself. Right? Saturn is aspecting Lagna. So that is the other important thing. If the Lagna or the 7th house are being triggered in Navamsha, that can show marriage. Yes, Lagna is a new beginning in that area of life. So Lagna and the relevant house, like Mohanji pointed out earlier, you can see the relevant house cusps also. And here you can see 7th house and Lagna. So that is another important thing. So because of these things, he could be married. But let's see the other event that made him more famous. So he became the president of US in 2008. He was elected with an emphatic margin. He was an outsider when the campaign began. Hillary was the favorite, and he's the second outsider to beat Hillary. I mean, he's the other. He's the first, actually. So let's see, after it was some time between his being elected and becoming the president, there was a stationary transit, I think at the end of December. So let's see after November 2008. So during his transition time, when he was transitioning into president, there was a stationary transit. So I think it was Saturn again. So let's say Saturn stationary after November 1st. So December 31st, 2008. So a few weeks before he was sworn in as the president, when he was busy finding people and filling positions, Saturn was stationary. And he was at 19 degree Taurus. Saturn was at 19 degree Taurus. So let's see in the Dasamsa chart, natal Dasamsa, 90 degree Taurus triggers anything. Okay. So if you see, does 90 degree Taurus trigger anything? Well, the only thing I see is first let's take this chart. Let's see what are the important things in this chart. I think we discussed this chart previously. The Lagna Lord Venus, the 9th Lord Mercury, and the fifth lord Rahu, they're all very closely conjoined. See the longitudes 18 degree Mercury. Okay, Venus is not close, but Rahu is close, 21 degree. So the fifth lord Rahu at 21 degree and the ninth lord Mercury at 18 degree. So they're all basically, both of them are very closely conjoined. And also the ninth lord is exalted here. So this basically is a powerful Raj Yoga. This occurring in the 12th house can basically have an influence of the 12th house on his Raj Yoga. In other words, he may seem aloof or not really interested or he doesn't care. There is some sense of aloofness to the way he conducts himself, a sense of detachment to the way he does business, but there is a very powerful Raj Yoga. So that 18 degree and 19 degree are the longitudes of Mercury and Venus. So when Saturn is at 19 degree, he's having half aspect on this Raj Yoga. The powerful Raj Yoga in the natal D10 is being triggered. But apart from it, let's take the Rasi longitude. Where is Saturn in the Rasi? 29 degree Leo, right? Is the 29 degree Saturn triggering anything? So if you look at the D10, he's triggering himself. So this 29 degree Saturn here is having almost 100% aspect on 28.5 degree Saturn here, within a half degree. And is this Saturn good or bad? Well, he's Yogakarka. So Yogakarka Saturn and also fifth lord of power. Rahu is one fifth lord engaged in a powerful Raj Yoga, but he's the other fifth lord. And being in the 8th house, he will give some sudden power. He shows sudden rise. Yogakarka always does you good. The only thing is, if he's in the 8th house, it will happen in a very sudden way. If he's in the 12th house, it will happen in a humble way. It will happen in a way where you are still detached and humble. It doesn't go to your head. So because his fifth lords are in 8th and 12th houses, he's humble about his sudden rise, and it is very sudden, but still there is a rise. So the Saturn is triggering this powerful Raj Yoga. So, and by the way, because Saturn is Yogakarka, the event is positive. So we saw some examples where the 6th lord or 8th lord were stationary and they were triggering the 4th lord or Lagna lord and gave accidents, or Yogakarka is stationary and he's triggering the 5th lord or 9th lord in the natal chart, or a Raj Yoga in the natal chart. And as a result, you basically see that there are either positive or negative things happening. So this is a very simple technique to use. All you need to do is open one window, see when planets are stationary. See, as an exercise, you can do it for yourself now. You can see, make today's chart and see when Jupiter will be stationary after, because I think it's in a couple of days. So when is Jupiter stationary after current date, June 4? So when you do that, you will find that he's stationary on June 9th morning, Boston time. So during a few weeks before or a month or month and a half after, he can give you important events in your life. The thing is, now look at the Rasi longitude. See, is this triggering any important divisional longitudes in your natal chart? Or take the relevant divisional chart. You are seeing marriage, see this. If you are seeing career, see this. If you are seeing wealth, see this. If you are seeing siblings, see this. If you are seeing properties, house, etc., see this. And children, see this. If you are seeing vehicles, see this. If you are seeing spirituality, see this. If you are seeing your education, see this. Like that, see that longitude. And in that divisional chart, is anything closely conjoined or aspected by it? And if it is there a theme? Are both like trine lord or quadrant lords, or some Yogakarka being triggered or yoga being triggered, or is it negative? So if it is particularly positive or negative, then you can go ahead and say there's a strong chance of this kind of a thing happening. Now, do I see it in the annual chart? Do confirm from the annual chart that there is an indication and then predict. And if you don't see a pattern, ignore. You don't have to predict something every time a stationary transit occurs. That's not how it works. Only some stationary transits will bring important events in your life. Okay.
Wonderful.
So this is basically, this is a very simple technique that you can use. And in addition, you can look at even when planets are not stationary, when important events are happening in life, there must be something important happening in the transit that is triggering some important natal divisional positions. So we will have another, in the next session, we will discuss that. But this is basically specifically when a planet is stationary, you look at the exact divisional longitude then and see its impact and how it plays out with respect to the natal chart. So this is one useful technique.
Yes, so wonderful. Thank you very much.
We will abstract it a bit, go one level up, and instead of focusing on stationary transit, just talk about transits. whenever some important event happens in life, there must be something triggering that in the transit. So you can look at the positions of planets in transit, especially the slow moving planets like Saturn and Jupiter and Rahu and Ketu, and correlate them with the natal longitudes, not just in the Rashi, but also in the divisional charts. The thing there is, you can see the longitudes of transit planets either in Rashi only or in divisional charts also. And if you want to use the divisional charts, there may be some correlations, but the thing is planets move very fast in the divisional chart. In a single year, Jupiter may move through one particular sign in the Rashi, but in the divisional chart, he may move through the zodiac, whole zodiac. So he may be touching various things at various times. So it will become very tricky to make any predictions. So from a practical point of view, let's not focus on the longitude of planets in divisional charts. Let's focus on the longitude of planet in the Rashi chart, the physical longitude of a transit planet, but how it plays out with divisional longitudes of natal planets. So in the natal Rashi chart, natal Navamsa, natal Dasamsa, various planets are placed in various signs. So when Jupiter is going through a particular arc of the zodiac, he will trigger some of those. So let's see which of those are being triggered during that year. So from that point of view, it's very simple. It's very similar to what we have done now. Correlate the transit longitude in the D1 chart of the planet with the natal divisional chart and see which positions are being triggered. And if, for example, the sixth lord Saturn is in transit triggering the eighth lord in the natal chart, maybe some bad event will happen. If a Yokaraka Saturn is triggering the 10th lord or 9th lord in the natal D10 chart, some auspicious event may happen in career and so on. So I think instead of actually talking too much, this will be better demonstrated just with some simple examples. So let me illustrate this idea with some examples. And I want to mention, just to be clear, that this is just a basic founding principle. People can develop this further. There are so many angles that they can develop this on. But I just want to illustrate the basic principles with some examples. Let me share my screen. Let's do the same thing that I did earlier. Let's have two windows. In one window, I will see an example chart, and in the other window, I will see the transit positions. Okay. So let's take my own chart. So I mentioned earlier that in 1998 on August 21st, I had a child. So let's say August 21st, 1998. So it was around 11:30 in the morning, approximately here. So if you look at the transits at that time, Saturn exactly on that day, he was at 11 degree Aries. So earlier we just focused on when a planet is stationary, we focused on the divisional longitude of that planet. So the event may not occur exactly at that time. Event may occur on one day, but stationary transit may be a month before or a month after. But at that time, we are taking the divisional longitude, freezing it, and seeing its play with the natal chart. Here, what we are seeing is exact time when the event is occurring, the day and time when the event is occurring. We'll just focus on this instead of looking at the D7 longitude. This may also be interesting, but what I said earlier is this is not useful for predictions because this Saturn will come close to this longitude several times. Maybe every year he comes once, so or maybe every year and a half. So it's not really useful. So let's focus on this. So when Saturn is at 11 degree Aries, is it triggering something useful in the natal chart that suggests that there will be childbirth? So here in the stationary transit, you can be more precise if it occurs. Here you can be less precise, but you can get some confidence. This transit correlation of the transit longitudes gives you more confidence in your predictions apart from the annual chart. So Saturn is at 11 degree Aries when the event occurred. So let's go back to the natal chart. So if you look at the natal chart, in the natal chart, you will see that let's see, Saptamsha. Okay. So when Saturn is at it was between 10 and 11, right? Yeah, 11 degree Aries. When Saturn is transiting at 11 degree Aries, he's actually aspecting the Lagna. Lagna is at 7 degree plus in Gemini. So Saturn is having a very close aspect on the Lagna. That is one thing. And also
the Venus.
The Venus.
The fifth lord.
Yeah, Venus, where is he? He's at, now Venus, yeah, there is some aspect, yeah, there is actually, he's a few degrees after that longitude. So he's having a close aspect on the fifth lord in Lagna. And also because he's at 11, this is basically within a few degree from Rahu also. 15 degree is the longitude of Rahu. So he's aspecting, he's basically between this longitude and this longitude. He's between the Lagna longitude and Rahu longitude. And actually on Venus, I will say the aspect is very weak because he's at 11 degree, right? So from 11
Even though
degree
he's
to
the
3
fifth lord?
degree.
Can we take him into consideration because he's the fifth lord?
Yeah, but the thing is the ARP is very wide, so
too
it's
wide?
not really too strong. It's not such a strong aspect, but there is a strong aspect on the Lagna, and there's a strong aspect on the ninth lord, whose dasha was running, by the way, at that time. And also Jupiter, he's at 16 degree. He's the Karka. So he's having half aspect on him. So these are the things that you can, here, Jupiter is here. So he's having half aspect on Jupiter. So these are some of the influences that you can take into consideration. And you can see other things also, because now we are not talking about just stationary planets. You can take all planets. So take, for example, Rahu here, Jupiter here, the Putra Karaka. He's at 3.5 degree Pisces, right? So when Jupiter is at 3.5 degree Pisces, in the Saptamsa, is it triggering anything from 3.5 degree Pisces? Look at the longitudes here. He's triggering this from 3.5 degree. Actually, this also is being aspected by 3/4 aspect, and this is very close 3/4 aspect now, 3.5 and 3.5. So Jupiter from here in transit, the Putrakarka, who's also in Molatrikona in the Saptamsa, so he's a very powerful planet. He's aspecting the fifth lord Venus. So Jupiter is triggering the fifth lord, and Saturn is triggering the Dasha lord and ninth lord, and also the Lagna. So this is basically auspicious for childbirth. So again, I wouldn't make predictions just based on transits. You have to look at the dashas and also particularly annual chart. But this can give you more confidence if you want to just look at the Rashi chart, right? Jupiter was in the second house, and the second house you can say that is the child of family. But when you just look at the Rasi, moon, and see the houses, you can't really be very confident. When people make predictions just based on the Rasi chart, things like Jupiter in the fifth house giving children, Saturn in the third house giving success, or Saturn in the sixth house giving success from the moon, these are very gross predictions. And I feel that you can get more precise predictions if you actually consider transits with respect to the natal divisional longitudes and actually look at the degrees themselves. Instead of just seeing that, yeah, he's in the fifth house from Jupiter, you can say that Jupiter is in the fifth house, Saturn is transiting in the fifth from Jupiter, etc. Instead, look at the exact correlation. So see Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu. So see the longitude and see, are they triggering something useful, especially if a planet is good in the chart. See, Saturn is the ninth lord here, so he's an important planet. So his positive transits can trigger positive results. Similarly, Jupiter is a strong Karaka who's in Mola Trikona. So his powerful transits can trigger things. So look at transit positions and correlate. So suppose you see somebody came to you for prediction and you looked at the annual chart and it looks like next year is a strong likelihood. Then when Jupiter is transiting, let's say Pisces, Jupiter is transiting in Pisces. So you can identify some longitudes here where he's aspecting Venus or Rahu, etc. And look at also Saturn, see where he's aspecting Venus or Lagna or Rahu, and come up with some shorter periods of time and also correlate them with the dashas of the annual charts, and you can basically then get more confidence in your predictions. Okay, let me give one more example. When I got married, it was August 1st, 1993. That's when I got married. It was in the evening, but I think we are making this chart for US, so this time will be good enough. We don't need precise longitude anyway. So around the time I got married, Saturn was around 5.5 degree Aquarius. Okay, and in like I said earlier, you can also look at the Navamsa longitudes, but those will be very dicey to make predictions based on. But there will be some correlation with the Navamsa longitude also. So let's see if Saturn is triggering anything when he's at the 5.5 degree here. Is he triggering anything useful in the natal chart? So when Saturn is here, is he aspecting anything? Can you see? In the natal Navamsa chart, he's aspecting the longitude of the fifth lord Mercury. Mercury is the fifth lord of Purva. He is at 8.5 degree. So when Saturn is at 6 degree here in Aquarius, he's having a 3/4 aspect. He's having a 3/4 aspect on this Mercury. So that is one thing, right? And is there any other thing? Let's see the Navamsa longitude. The Navamsa longitude was, what was it? It was 21 degrees Scorpio. So when he's at 21 degrees Scorpio, is he aspecting anything useful here? Well, he's aspecting the Lagna itself. Saturn is aspecting Lagna, and also he's aspecting himself. So Yogarka Saturn is aspecting his own natal position, the Yogarka, he's aspecting Lagna. So the Navamsa transit can also trigger, but like I said earlier, I'm just pointing out that there are correlations with the Navamsa longitudes also, but it will be very difficult to predict based on it. So if you see that somebody is likely to get married during this time, you basically see where is Saturn? Is he transiting? Is he aspecting or conjoining anything useful here? So here he's triggering Mercury, so there is a possibility. Otherwise, you will wait for maybe another year and a half. When Saturn comes to some 20 degree longitude here, when he closely aspects the Saturn here, that would be a good period when marriage may occur. So like this, you correlate the longitude of the natal plan, Rasi longitude of the transit planet with various important positions in the natal Navamsa, and see possible periods when marriage can be granted.
In this case, Saturn aspects the 7th house by its 10th aspect.
Right. But the thing is that aspect is very weak. It's not a strong aspect because the longitude, what was it? It was 5.5 degrees. So basically 6 degree. 6 degree Aquarius, Lagna is at 25 degree Taurus. So the aspect is not really that strong. It's a very weak aspect. Basically, it's not close in longitude. So you can't really, you can say that he's aspecting the seventh house, that's good, but still on the cusp, the aspect is not strong. So that doesn't really, because the way, if you do that, if you ignore the longitudes, if you just go by the houses, there'll be just too many possibilities.
Right.
He'll be aspecting too many things. So what I'm talking about here is, when important events happen, there'll be something being triggered. It may not be as simple as seventh lord being aspected by Yokarka. It may not be as simple. It may be just here Mercury, well, he's Purva lord and he's in Lagna. So he's an auspicious planet, but it's not like he's the main planet who gives marriage. There are other candidates. Venus, he's the marriage Karaka, and also he's Lagna lord. Mars is the seventh lord. Ketu is the other seventh lord. So there are other candidates. But the thing is, some strong positive candidate will be getting a close trigger during that time. That's basically the thing. And for that, I suggest using the longitudes. So there will be some that will be very clear. There will be some where it's not so clear. But the thing is, there will be something being triggered at the time of an event, some important aspect. Let's take my other child's birth. It was February 18, 1996. That was the birth of my first child. So it was around 9:30 in the PM. So let's take the transit of again Saturn, because he's an important planet in my natal Saptamsa. He's the 9th lord. So let's take where Saturn is. He's at 1.5 degree Pisces. Okay, 1.5 degree Pisces. So let's see in the natal chart, in the natal Saptamsa. Let's go back to the Saptamsa. When he's at 1.5 degree Pisces, does he aspect anything in the D7 chart? Well, like we saw earlier, Venus is at 3.5 degree Gemini. So he's having 3/4 aspect on the 5th lord. So Saturn is having a close 3/4 aspect on Venus. So that is good. The other thing, look at Jupiter, the Karaka. He's at 17 degree Sagittarius, right? He's at 17 degree Sagittarius. Is he triggering anything in the D16? Well, he's triggering himself, I believe. Where is he? No? D7 here. So he's at 16 degree in Sagittarius in the natal D7 chart. And here it was 17 degree Sagittarius. So he's triggering his own natal D7 position, the Karaka, and also like we discussed earlier, Rahu is around that longitude. Rahu, the 9th lord, whose Dasha was running at that time, is at 15 degree Gemini. So this Jupiter is triggering the Rahu and also triggering his own position. So those are the other factors. So the fact that Saturn is triggering fifth lord and Jupiter is triggering himself and Rahu, there is a chance that there is a childbirth at that time. Okay. And you can now look at the Saptansha positions and see, for example, Saturn is at 20 degree Pisces, right? So that would actually also trigger by its 10th aspect, the same Jupiter, and 4th aspect, 3/4 aspect on Rahu, it will trigger. But what I was saying earlier was, he will come to positions that will aspect these in Saptamsha many times during the year. So it will be very tricky to make predictions. It is good for justifying what you know, but if you are looking at the next 1 year and see what are likely periods when important triggers are occurring, it will be difficult. So I suggest ignoring this for this purpose and just focus on the Rasi longitude. Whereas in the previous session when we looked at stationary transits, there we are taking one frozen point. Basically, when a planet is in deep meditation, you are freezing longitudes at that time. Then you can look at the divisional longitudes and give them prominence and see how they are playing out with respect to natal positions. But here, when you are looking at continuously moving longitudes, it is good to have something stable. Instead of introducing too much noise into your data, just focus on these longitudes and see what is triggering. So focus, of course, you can look at Mars, Mercury, etc. But I suggest really focus on Jupiter, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu. Identify those that are particularly good or bad for the chart and take their transits.
Yeah, Narashimha Rao, one question which I wanted to ask is, if it is a second child, do you want to look at 7th, 3rd child, 9th, or you just look at 5th lord and the Karaka Jupiter?
Pardon me?
If it is the second child, you look at 7th and 3rd child, 9th, and likewise.
Right. So the teaching of Sri Jagannath Center, Pandit Sanjay Rath was, first child is seen from the 5th house, second child from the 7th house, third child from the 9th house, etc. So that is something that I have not accepted yet. What I do is, for childbirth, 5th house, 9th house, these are the important houses. Jupiter is the Karaka. And then I'm able to see in the annual charts and in transits, I'm able to see both of them, all the children, the same way. So, but the thing is, in order to say specific things about a child, it may be necessary to take the 5th house, 7th house, 9th house, etc. and take those as Lagna. But the thing is, should you take the house or the house lord or the Pada of the house lord? I haven't made up my mind yet on that. So I don't basically try to give specific predictions for child. But if you want to see from the native's point of view, I just take the same houses for all the children.
Okay.
So let's take one more event. I went abroad. I left India for the first time on August 15, I believe, on the Independence Day, 1991. So I finished my BTech at IIT Madras and I came to Houston, Rice University, for my master's. So that was around August 15, 1991, early morning in India. And I think next day evening I reached here. So I think this time is good enough. This is good enough. So let's say the transits at that time. Let's first see Saturn. Saturn was at 9.5 degree Capricorn. Okay. Saturn is at 9.5 degree Capricorn. So, oh, did I change here? Let me stick to the same procedure. Let me keep the natal chart. In the other chart, let's make the transit chart. August 15, 1991. So Saturn is at 9.5 degree Capricorn. And let's come to the natal D4. For residence, I see the D4 chart. So in the D4 chart, does 9.5 Capricorn trigger anything in the D4 chart? Let's see that. So when Saturn is at
13.
For me, Jupiter
is at 13.
Yes, Jupiter is the debilitated Lagna Lord. See, Lagna Lord is debilitated and he's with the 9th Lord who's exalted. So Jupiter is at 13.5 and Saturn is at 21. So Lagna Lord is debilitated, 9th Lord is exalted, and they are together. So it can show displacement. Lagna Lord shows being in your place, but he's weak here. He's in his sign of debilitation, and he's with the 9th Lord who's very strong. And 9 shows prospering abroad. So you can see that Saturn is triggering this Jupiter. And let's see, is there anything else of interest?
Venus which aspect.
Pardon me?
It was aspecting Venus also very closely. Yeah, very closely.
Yeah. That's very true. Venus is being aspected, and what does Venus show? 3rd house of travel and 8th house of instability. So immediately after you change your place of residence, there'll be some instability. During that time, You are getting used to a new culture, new place, new hostel that you are living in. Everything is new. So basically, Saturn, by the way, Saturn is the 12th lord of displacement here in this chart. He's also in the 8th house of instability. So that Saturn triggering Venus and Saturn triggering Jupiter is one thing. And let's see, is there anything else?
It's actually triggering Saturn also in Libra.
For me?
It is triggering Saturn also in Libra.
Yeah, that's a good point.
D4.
So
D4.
It's very close. Yes, Saturn is triggering himself. That's an excellent point. So Saturn, who's at 9 degree, is actually aspecting himself, who's at 5 degree in Libra by the 10th aspect. So that is the other thing that is happening. And let's see, is there anything happening with Rahu? Rahu is not this chart. In this chart, Rahu is at 25 Sagittarius. So is it triggering anything useful here? So in this chart, is there anybody interesting at 24 degree? Not really. Oh, actually, no, this is not real longitude. So not really, but there is some aspect. It's not a very close aspect, but there is some aspect on Mercury. Rahu is aspecting Mercury. So the 12th lord is aspecting Badhaka lord. So that is another factor, but this is a weak factor. But Saturn's aspects are really very strong on himself, on Venus, and also on Jupiter. So let's take the other example in the same chart. Another example when I left India. So after my master's at Rice in 93 July, I went back to India and I suddenly got married. I worked for a year. I left India and I suddenly unexpectedly and without trying, I got an opportunity in South Korea. So I went there and I lived there for around 9 months before I came back to US and settled down here since then. So in November 94, I think November 9th or 10th, it was 10th, November 10th. So November 10th, 1994. So on that day, I left India again, and this time permanently so far for a couple of decades. So Saturn at the time was at 13 degree Aquarius. Okay, Saturn is at 13 degree Aquarius. So let's see if he's triggering anything from 13 degree Aquarius. So if you see the D4 chart, is there anything being triggered by 13 degree Aquarius?
13 Mercury.
First of all, Mercury is getting a third house aspect within a few degrees. So Badhaka Lord Mercury is being triggered. And then there is also a conjunction with 17 degree Ketu. And Ketu is really a strong planet here because he is the 9th lord of living abroad in the 12th house of, again, staying away from your birthplace. So this Ketu is being triggered, and obviously that means Rahu also will be aspected. So the 12th lord Rahu is aspected, and 9th lord Ketu, who is in the 12th house, is being conjoined. And then there is an aspect on the Badhaka lord. So there is a comprehensive Badhaka, 12th house and 9th house. All these are being covered. So there's a comprehensive coverage by Saturn. And then maybe other things like Rahu. I don't know if there is anything happening with Rahu. So 22 degree maybe, or maybe may not. 22 degree, well, there is something. 22 degree, not really. So I think that's it. So that Saturn transit was really a big trigger. So again, to go back, you don't want to basically make prediction just based on this. If you see that the Saturn, who's the 12th lord here, is triggering this Rahu Ketu axis and Mercury in transit, or he's triggering Jupiter himself and Venus, you don't make a prediction just based on that. But the thing is, that means one trigger is there. Transit is one trigger, and see if the Dasha shows some potential during that Antardasha, Mahadasha, and Antardasha, and the annual charts have any indication. So that's really the key. So when you can combine all these things and make predictions. But the thing is, instead of saying that Saturn is transiting Janma Rashi, see, Saturn, when he was here, he took me abroad. When he was here again, he took me, when he was here, he took me abroad. When he was here again, he took me abroad. And the thing is, if you just explain it as Saturn in the 12th house, or Saturn aspecting 9th, some house, aspecting 12th from Lagna, that will be very gross. So what I am suggesting is that by looking at the longitudes, you can actually be more precise. And you can actually look at longitudes in each divisional chart to distinguish. So Jupiter may be in the 5th house from Moon, and the tradition says that that is a good transit. But the thing is, by correlating with the divisional charts, you can say in which area it is good. Is it in career? Is it in children? Is it in education? Is it in spiritual progress, etc.? So instead of just seeing transits in various houses from moon of Rasi chart, you see the transit longitudes, correlate them with various natal longitudes. Let's take one more example. Let's take the career of Ronald Reagan. So first let's open Ronald Reagan's chart. Ronald Reagan, the famous president of US. Why is it taking so long? Did I double click? Give me a second. So let's, okay. No, don't save it. So this is the chart of Ronald Reagan, and he became president. He was elected president on November 4, 1980. November 4, 1980. 1980. So tentatively, let's just say 11 o'clock in the night. It must. We don't need exact time here because we are seeing Rasi longitude, but I'll just be close to that. Yeah, it was a Tuesday, so that was the right date. So November 4, 1980, he was elected as the president of US, defeating a sitting president, which hasn't happened too often in the last 30 years. Only this was one case, and George H.W. Bush was another case. And hopefully we'll have another case soon. But so let's see the transit of Saturn in this chart. So in the D1 chart, Saturn is transiting at the time. Saturn is at 13° Virgo. Okay, Saturn is at 13° Virgo. So if you see this Dasamsa chart, is there anything being triggered by 13° Virgo?
Jupiter.
Pardon me? Well, when he's at 13° Virgo, you can say that he's transiting Shukra, but the thing is that's not really, if you ask me, that's not strong because he's at 0°, 1 degree, right? So 13° Virgo does not have a strong aspect on the 0° Gemini. Okay, so but the thing is, you look at the longitude. Lagna is at 14° Aquarius. So where is the fifth house of power? 14° Gemini. And where is Saturn? We said in transit.
13°.
13° Virgo. So 13° Virgo and 14° Virgo. That's very close. And Saturn does have a 100% aspect on 10th house. So there is a 100% aspect by Saturn on the fifth house of power and also the 10th house of career, of Simhasana. So both the houses are getting a very strong influence of Saturn. And Saturn is the Lagna Lord in this chart, right? Lagna Lord, and is placed in the 6th house. Placed in the 6th house as a natural malefic, he gives vanquishing of the enemies. So Saturn is a very auspicious planet in this chart. So he's triggering of the 5th house and 10th house at the time of elections. If you're looking at his chart before the elections, you can look at annual charts and natal dasas, and this transit would basically give you more confidence that there is a good chance that he will be elected rather than he will be defeated. Now, there may be other things. If you look at the Rahu transit, etc., there may be other triggers that may be happening based on Rahu. Rahu may be triggering somebody, but let's ignore all that for now. Let's move on to the next example. Let's take George W. Bush. Even though the elections were in 2000 November, he was actually elected. He was declared as the president in December. It was exactly December 16, sometime in the afternoon. I don't know if you guys remember, but I don't remember the exact time. Let's say 3 o'clock. But again, the time doesn't matter because this longitude changes very slowly. So there was a protracted court litigation on whether to count Florida ballots or not. So Bush and Gore, they fought it out. And on December 16, there was a final Supreme Court decision. And after that, Al Gore conceded. He said, I don't want to fight it any further. This is it. And then Bush was declared as the president, and quickly they did the transition. So at that time, let's see the transits of Jupiter. So if you Jupiter and let's see Ketu, Jupiter and Ketu. So in this chart, where is Jupiter?
10 Taurus.
He's at 11° Taurus.
11, yeah.
Okay, 11° Taurus. Is he triggering anything interesting here? And of course, he won't trigger anything in Ronald Reagan's chart. Let's go to George W. Bush chart. So Jupiter, I forgot the longitude. He's at 11 degree Taurus, right? Jupiter is at 11 degree Taurus. Is he triggering anything useful? So I think we saw this chart earlier. You guys may remember that the
14
Ghatika
degrees,
Lagna was
plus Saturn, 14 degrees Scorpio.
Yeah, and Ghatika Lagna was also there. 15 degrees Scorpio was
Yes.
Ghatika Lagna. Saturn was in the 5th house of power, and he was very close, within a degree from Ghatika Lagna. So he shows that power. So that Jupiter was triggering him. Okay, so that is one thing.
Plus Capricorn, Rahu also.
It
triggers Rahu.
Rahu, but Rahu doesn't really mean anything. Rahu doesn't really show anything interesting, anything positive and interesting. And the thing is, Rahu being the 8th lord in the 7th house is a maraka. He actually shows a lot of tensions, pressures, etc. And by the way, Jupiter is the planet of 6th lord also. He's 9th lord, but also 6th lord. See, he's 9th lord with the Lagna lord, showing a Rajayoga, but also he's the 6th lord. So he shows litigation, etc. Rahu shows tension. So during that time, Jupiter was actually triggering Rahu also. 6th lord triggering of Rahu can also show tension, etc. So that is why there was no clean result and there was a lot of tension. But finally, the real thing that gave power from the point of view of power, see, litigation is to the person, all the tensions, all the court case is to the Lagna. But finally, the person did get power. And the power, the seat of power is Ghati Lagna. So Jupiter, who's the 9th lord, giving a Rajoga from Lagna, and also from Ghatika Lagna, he's the 5th lord. So he is triggering Ghatika Lagna in transit at that time. So his being here is triggering the Ghatika Lagna and also the planet in the Ghatika Lagna. So that is one thing. The other thing is take Ketu. Ketu is at 23 degrees Sagittarius. Okay. And why is Ketu important? Because he's the 5th lord of power and Ghatika Lagna lord. So he's an important planet and he's at 23 degrees Sagittarius. Is there anything around that longitude? Well, there is Moon, Lagna lord. So Moon, the Lagna lord, who's giving and also there is A9 and A10 there. So Moon, the Lagna lord, is placed in A9 and A10. So he gives a lot of power. But again, you should see that this Rajoga is occurring in the 12th house of giving up or reluctance. So like Obama, he also has this combination, Lagna lord in the 12th house. So he was seen as not a forceful or reluctant leader. People thought that Cheney was running the show and he was basically behind the scenes. And with Obama, people have this impression that he's not powerful enough, strong enough. Liberals think that he's not liberal enough, he's not forcing the agenda, he's too meek and more professor-like. And conservatives say that he just doesn't care about anything. So people love him, but they think he's a strong leader, but at the same time, there is this wind of either humility or some kind of withdrawal. And that is seen in both these charts. In any case, the main thing is the Lagna lord giving this Rajoga is being triggered by the 5th lord Ketu, and Jupiter is triggering the Ghatika Lagna. So those basically are very conducive. And now let's change the tracks. Let's see another case where this is not about career, but this is more spiritual. So Swami Shivananda Saraswati, the founder of Divine Life Society, he founded I will take the time when he was given Diksha by a guru. So he was a very successful doctor and organizer of a big, he was running a big hospital system in Singapore, and he went back to India for vacation. So for a couple of months, he went around India and he was traveling on a pilgrimage. And then suddenly when he was in Rishikesh, a guru showed up and gave him Diksha and said, take sannyasa now. And then he just went into a hut and started meditating continuously. So that Diksha was given, sannyasa Diksha was given by Guru on June 1st, 1924, I think. Let me check my notes. Yeah, 1924. 1920, I don't know the exact time, but we don't care. So June 1, 1924 is when he found a Guru, and his spiritual awakening happened. And he started his sadhana. So at that time, where is Jupiter? He's at 24 degrees Scorpio. Okay, remember this, 24 degrees Scorpio. And let's make Swamiji's chart. Swami Sivananda Saraswati. He was an unbelievable saint. Unlike others, he mastered so many different paths and created sishyas who are exponents of different paths. Instead of teaching the same path to all the sishyas and making them in his mold, he created experts in different paths. He was an amazing saint, just like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. If we take somebody else like Ramana Maharshi, they were great, but they were basically focused on one path. But Sivananda and Ramakrishna, these were amazing. They embodied all different paths, and their disciples were exponents in various different paths. Just amazing in this age. So he was at 24 degrees Scorpio. Anything interesting being triggered in the D20 chart? I can't see it clearly, so let me open this window. So in the D20, anything interesting? Yeah, you see that Rahu and Ketu, they're getting triggered, right? And also Sun, and also Moon. So the luminaries and the nodes are being triggered. Okay, so 24 degree Jupiter is aspecting the 8th Lord Ketu, who's in the second house aspecting 8th house. So that shows intense sadhana and also experiences. So that Ketu, 8th house is experiences in D20, mystical experiences. So that Ketu is being triggered by this Jupiter, and also Sun is getting a very close aspect. Sun is 26 degree, right? So 24 degree to 26 is very close. Sun is, who is he? He is in the 12th house of giving up, renunciation, and is the 5th lord of Purvapunya. So Purvapunya going into renunciation. So suddenly, because of his Purvapunya, somebody appeared and he basically gave him Diksha, he gave him renunciation. So that was basically shown by Sun, and that was being triggered by Jupiter. And you have to remember, by the way, Jupiter is the lord of the house of Guru, placed in the house of Guru here. 9th lord in the 9th house, and also he's the 12th lord. So the lord of renunciation and lord of Guru. So he is triggering the 5th lord in the house of renunciation. And Moon, 4th lord in the 4th house. That shows direction, knowing what you're doing and having a clear sense of direction, which gives you peace. 4th house is the house of peace, and peace coming from knowing what you're doing, why you're doing it, being clear about your path. So 4th house is the house of path, direction, clarity, peace. So Moon in the 4th house is very strong in one house, and he was closely triggered. So because of all these factors being triggered by Jupiter, this Jupiter as 24 degree, this was basically a very auspicious time for him. So very important things happened for him. And there may be other transits. If you look at Rahu and Ketu, you may be able to find some more things, but I'll just take it easy for now. Okay. Let's take another example of D20 before we move back to the D10 chart. Let's take one more example. Ramana Maharshi, July 16, 1896, July 16, 1896 afternoon in India. So let's say 1 o'clock here, approximately. So July 16 afternoon in India.
We're in Ronald Reagan's chart.
Oops, thanks. First, let's open Ramana Maharshi then. Thanks. Yeah, feel free to try open it in the wrong window. Okay, sorry. Okay, so this is Ramana Maharshi chart, and now let's go to the second window and let's open a new chart. Open July 16, 1896, 1 o'clock. Doesn't matter. The exact time doesn't matter, but it was July 16, 1896 afternoon in India. So he was just lying down, and he just spontaneously experienced an awakening. He basically experienced a state of bodilessness, a state of the oneness that fills the universe. Basically something, he experienced the same thing that I believe I experienced on June 10th, 2005, which basically clearly tells you that this whole world is just a temporary, delusion may be a wrong word, but just a temporary thing that you are experiencing. And just like you wake up from a dream, you will wake up. So there were enough forces to basically take him in that direction. So he really wanted to experience the state again and again. He wanted to end this. For some people, when they experience that, they may get this confidence that, yeah, that is my real state. This is just temporary. So let me just go through this. And finally, when this ends, that will return. And that is the real and permanent state. So all the agitation when they go through life, when good things and bad things happen, when people praise them, criticize them, when success comes and failure comes, when pleasures and pain come, they may basically not really take them the same way as other people do, because they're clear that this doesn't matter, that will again come. But the thing is, in some people, for whatever reason, because of previous momentum, there is a passion to recreate that even now, even here and now, instead of experiencing, for example, this talking, etc., this astrology research, etc., I can say I don't want all this, I just want to be in that state that I was during that moment. So that is what Ramana did. He basically pursued that state continuously for many years, and after many years he reached a state where he was living the life, but even during that life, even when he seemed to be living regular life, he was experiencing the state. So in the state, basically, he became known as Bhagavan, and he taught a few things to the world, and he left. So this triggered that experience that came unsought, by the way. Some people do deep meditation for hours and hours and nothing happens. But for somebody, because all the things that they did in the past trigger it in terms of the horoscope, things just happen. So for Ramana, things just happened at that time. Things spontaneously happened. So let's see where Jupiter was at that time. Oops. So let's see Jupiter. He's at 23-degree Cancer. So Jupiter is at 23-degree Cancer. So anything interesting in the T20 being triggered? Jupiter is 23-degree Cancer. So this is one thing, obviously, and this is the other thing. 23-degree, and this also is being triggered, Saturn. So okay, so first of all, this is being triggered. 23-degree Cancer Jupiter will be aspecting Saturn at 26-degree. And is Saturn interesting? Of course he's very interesting. Why? Because he is the 7th lord in the 8th house. Like I told you earlier, 7th lord in 8th will show mystical experiences. He shows basically a death-like experience in spiritual sadhana, which is basically ending of current existence and experiencing the reality. So if you remember, in my D20, the 8th lord Jupiter was in the 7th house. Here 7th lord Saturn is in the 8th house. So it's very similar. And in my case, Jupiter was exactly aspecting natal Jupiter position then at the time of stationary transit. But if you look at the exact date also, the same thing will happen because it was 4 days later. So here the 8th lord Jupiter in the natal chart, Jupiter was the Purva lord, showing Purva coming into life, and also 8th lord of experiences. Out of body experiences. So that Jupiter was triggering the 7th lord in 8th Saturn. He was triggering his own position. Basically 8th lord was being triggered by himself, right? So Jupiter was exactly at 23-degree Scorpio, and he was also triggering Mercury. But Mercury is of less interest here. Mercury doesn't really mean much. But the thing is, being the 2nd lord in the 8th house with the 7th lord, he is basically another marka. He indicates he strengthens the marka indications of Saturn, except that Mercury doesn't really mean much. But Saturn and Jupiter being triggered by Jupiter is conducive to some experience that shows you the reality. Mm-hmm. That basically gives you a death-like experience. So that this is similar to what you saw in my D20. And in the Sivananda's case, there was some 8th house activation, but it was mostly 4th and 5th house activation and 12th house activation. So he didn't necessarily get any mystical experience at that time, but he was given initiation by a guru. And within a couple of years, he experienced samadhi. So he experienced the state that is permanent, as opposed to the temporary state that we all experience. So that was later, but exactly at that time, the things that were being triggered in the transit were 4th and 5th houses and the 12th house. That is why he got a direction, he got a guru, he got a direction, and he renounced the world. And Ramana, by the way, did not renounce anything officially. After this just triggered changes. He just left home and he wandered, and finally he settled down at a temple town. Oh. Okay, let me see. There must be something with the D4 also, because he left home at that time. I think there should be something with D4 also. So let's see the D4. Is there anything interesting happening with the D4? Because he left home immediately after that. He just took a little money. He took on a train without telling his parents. They didn't even know what happened to him for many years. So if you look at the if you look at all the transits, let's see where various planets are. Jupiter at 23 Cancer, Saturn at 21 Libra, and Rahu at 3 degree Aquarius. Okay, 21 Libra, 3 degree Aquarius. So are they triggering anything in the D4? So there must be something going on. So Saturn is at 21 Libra. Is there anything around, anything being triggered by 21 Libra? So Saturn is not really triggering anything. And Rahu Ketu, Ketu at 3 Leo, Rahu at 3.5 Aquarius. So Rahu is at 3.5 Aquarius. So Rahu is triggering Mercury. Okay. Rahu is triggering Mercury. So that is one thing that is happening. So Mercury is the Lagna Lord, who basically shows your residence, and also is the 4th Lord, being in the 12th house from it. So this is the house of stability in your residence. So being in the 12th, he shows not having a stable residence and giving up the residence, etc. And also it can show travel, always being away from this your house. Somebody who's always traveling also can be shown by Lagna and 4th Lord in the 3rd house. So that Mercury is being triggered by Rahu and also Ketu. Ketu is the 6th Lord, showing some tensions relating to it or some disturbances, and Rahu is the 9th Lord of fortune. So basically Rahu and Ketu triggering Mercury can show some giving up the residence and traveling a lot and not having a stable residence. And let's see if anybody, because this was a big change at the physical level, forget about individual divisional chart. Physically, this was a big change in his life, basically, right? Everything basically went for a wire. So is somebody triggering this 23 Aries Mars? Somebody must be triggering. Is somebody close to that? See, Saturn. So Saturn is at 21 degree Libra, right? Saturn is at 21 degree Libra. So he's the 5th and 6th Lord of Poropunya, as well as fights and challenges in life. Poropunya and challenges. So the Saturn is triggering the 8th Lord Mars. So it shows a period of challenges, changes, etc. So he went from one place to another place. He just traveled with the little money he had. He had whatever people gave him, whatever he could get without trying too hard. He wasn't concerned about whether there will be money or food, whether he'll be able to survive. He was so passionate to recreate the state that he experienced earlier. He just wanted to be that again. And that was basically that kind of change. Basically, it should be seen in the Rasi chart also, because this is covering all your divisional charts now. This is basically something very fundamental to your existence, physical existence. So all the physical changes that were occurring are obviously from this Mars being triggered by Saturn. Okay. So let's see if I can do one more chart. Let's see Mr. Obama, Barack Obama. Let's go back to him again. I think I'm doing the same thing again. So let's go back to the first chart, just strictly, and open Barack Obama chart here. Let's go back to the second chart. And he was elected on November 4, 2008. So November 4, 2008. It was probably in the night. And I think by 11 o'clock, I think results were clear by the time I slept, I believe. But again, we don't really need accurate things here. So Saturn was at 26 degree Leo. Saturn was 26 degree Leo, and Rahu was at 21 degree Capricorn. So Saturn and Rahu. Why am I looking at Saturn and Rahu? If you remember, his Lagna was Libra. Saturn and Rahu were the 5th lords. So I'm seeing their transits. Are they triggering something useful? So 26 Leo Saturn, 21 Capricorn Rahu. So when Saturn is at 26 degree Capricorn, not Chaturthansya, we want Dasamsya now. So he's aspecting closely 28 Taurus. When Saturn is at 26 degree Leo, he's aspecting 28 degree in Taurus, right? By 10th aspect. Saturn has 100% 10th aspect. So the 5th lord of the natal D10 is being triggered by himself in transit. So that is basically a positive thing for gaining power during that time. Okay. And then is there anything happening with Rahu? Rahu is at 21 degree Capricorn, right? That's what I remember. Yeah, 21 degree Capricorn is Rahu, the other 5th lord. Is it triggering anything? Yeah, absolutely. Because if you remember, 18 and 19 were kind of the longitudes of Mercury and Rahu. Rahu is at 21 degree and Mercury was at 18.5 degree. So there is a Raj Yoga, as we saw earlier, between 9th Lord and 5th Lord in the 12th house. So this combination is very closely aspected. So Rahu aspecting himself, Saturn aspecting himself. So this is basically the 5th Lords are being triggered. The Raj Yoga is being triggered. So there is a good chance of coming to power. And then let's finally, for this session, the last example I want to see is our current beloved President Donald Trump. I think the man who will end up probably benefiting environment by accident, unintentionally. So let's look at Mr. Donald Trump. This is his chart. The data I'm using is June 14. You can actually see it here. No need to read it. So at the time of election, let's see the transits. Some people may wonder why I predicted that he will lose. I didn't even have a confident chart of Hillary. I just had Donald Trump's chart. I did see all these things. I did see some positive things, but obviously I saw a lot of weaknesses in the chart. I was concerned about such a person being the US president as a US citizen. I convinced myself that he would not be. So let's see the...
Yes, it was difficult to be detached.
Yeah, especially when it changes the world. When it changes the world.
Yes, exactly.
He has Jupiter stationary in his natal chart, and at this time Jupiter was pretty powerful.
That could be. Let's now see the divisional charts. Let's see the transits at the time. On November 1, 2016 night, let's see the transit of Saturn. So Saturn in the Rasi chart, he was transiting at 21 Scorpio. Okay, he's at 21 Scorpio. And let's see, is it triggering anything in the D10? So in the D10, by the way, Saturn is Yokaraka and also 5th Lord of Power. So in the D10 chart, there is a Raj Yoga between 19 degrees Scorpio and 22 degrees Scorpio. So Mercury at 19 degrees Scorpio, Venus at 22 degrees Scorpio are having a powerful Raj Yoga. Second house is a good house for both of them. And they are the Lagna Lord and 9th Lord. So there is a powerful Raj Yoga. Okay. And that Raj Yoga is being triggered by Saturn at exactly that longitude. So that's basically a very auspicious thing. And there are other things that are secondary. Basically, if the 5th Lord and Yokarka is triggering your Raj Yoga, that's really, really strong. But there are other things. Look at Rahu, the other 5th Lord of Power, right? He's the 5th Lord of Power who's placed in a quadrant. So he's actually pretty strong himself. And this planet is in the Rashi chart transiting at 18 degree Leo. And is it triggering anything from 18 degree Leo? Is he 18 degree Leo? So where is from 18 degree Leo, is there anything being triggered? Yeah, he is. See, Lagna is at 20 degree Libra. So 5th house cusp is at 20 degree Aquarius. So he's actually from 18 degree, is it 18 degree?
Yeah.
18 degree Leo, he's having a close aspect on 20 degree Aquarius. So the 5th Lord is aspecting 5th house cusp. And the other 5th Lord is having a close conjunction with the Raj Yoga between Lagna Lord and 9th Lord. So fortunately for him, and probably unfortunately for the world, basically this is a very too powerful transit in the D10 for him. So like this, basically this is just a simple technique to see the longitudes instead of just focusing on which houses planets are in. If you have done astrology for years, you will know that promotions don't happen just when Saturn is in the 3rd or 6th house from Moon, or Jupiter in the 5th house or 9th house or 11th house. They may happen on all kinds of houses. Jupiter may be in the 8th house, 3rd house, Saturn may be in the 8th house. I've seen so many counter examples. So just using the houses that planets are transiting from natal moon is practically useless. And even if you do it from the moon's sign in the natal divisional chart, I don't see any consistent results. The only way I see some reasonably consistent results is if I involve the longitudes themselves. And
wonderful.
Don't be very flexible, like 15 degree off, then say, yeah, he's aspecting. No, be very strict. Yes. It should be within 4-5 degrees. And it should be a strong yoga or strong planet being triggered by another strong planet. And then basically you can say that there is a trigger happening, and then use it as one of the factors in your analysis. Don't rely just on this. Use the annual charts and natal dasas also. And I think using all these things you can be quite confident. And then when you're confident of something, like in the case of Trump's election, don't deny it. Basically, either don't make prediction if you don't want to waste your speech, or just keep quiet. Don't.
Yes.
But the thing is, if your own horoscope shows that you have to fail, you have to go through that. That is basically also part of the game. So that is the other thing. But the thing is, this is a very useful way to look at transits. So look at the natal Rasi transits of planets and correlate with the natal divisional charts. Okay, and then something should stand out when something important happens.
Yes.
So are there any questions?
Thank you so much for this.
Great. So in the next session, I want to discuss correlating multiple divisional charts. So how do you compare different divisional charts and see the links between them? So that should be a very useful and interesting discussion, and also platform for further research by other astrologers.
Perfect, perfect. And we will establish some place for all this to come together.
Great. I'll leave it to you. That's not my problem. That's not my business. I'll leave it to you guys. My dharma is done by speaking like this. Okay. So thank you.